This is the easiest way to implement consent banner to your Shopify website. All what you need to do is installing this app to your Shopify website. The link of that app will be in the description. This is Pandectes. So I have already installed this on my demo website. So let's navigate over there. Once you visit your Shopify website, go to the online store section. Then with the live website theme, hit customize, click on app theme embed or embeds over here, and make sure that the app embed is enabled. If it's not enabled, as this is the case by default in most cases, make sure it is enabled and hit save. Now let's go back to the app. I have this interface because I have enabled my banner, but in your case, it would be slightly different and you would be directed to their onboarding wizard. So you can complete all the steps and go with your banner. So let's go to the settings section. Within the settings section, there are many options that we can go through. In this video, we'll focus on the key things that we need to configure our banner. So the first thing is clicking on the banner icon over here and then configuring the banner itself. So we have three things. So one is behavior, what kind of banner that we would like to have on our website. For me, I have chosen the preferences option and choose strict loose policy. You can also change this as needed, and at the bottom you can change the banner icon. This is what the users would see once the banner is clicked, whether they have accepted or denied it. Then you can choose the explicit or implied option to make sure that the user choose a consent option before the banner disappears and this icon appears to them. You can also change the style of the banner by choosing one of these options. You can also customize the content if needed. Now let's go back to the settings option and hit the integration menu. They have lots of good integrations with lots of tools, but the main one that interests me is the Google Consent mode, as this is what we're going to be using to configure our tracking to make sure it's consent compliant within Google Tag Manager. So I have enabled that option and added my GTM container, and I'll show you in minutes how this looks like on the GTM side of things. Now let's go back and see the auto blocker feature. This feature is really amazing. This comes in handy if you have any tracking snippet that is not configured inside Google Tag Manager. It is hard-coded through a code snippet or any native integration option. So if you're using a native integration channel like for Facebook or Google, you can enable this option and then highlight the channels that you want to be plugged. From the geolocation menu, you can choose which countries should the banner appear to them. For me, I chose the global option, but you can also specify specific regions for the banner to populate. They have many more features that you can go through, but these are the ones that I think you should be checking once you download the app to configure your banner. And they are also 100% fully integrated with Shopify, which is a great thing. Once you go through all the steps that I have just showed you, make sure that your banner is active. They also have a pretty cool feature, which is an admin mode. So if you enable the admin mode inside of the banner, you will have the ability to QA or test the banner behavior before you publish it on your live website. If you also have any questions, I highly encourage you to reach out to their support team. There should be a small pop-up from here that you can click on and start a conversation with the team directly. They are pretty helpful. I had some questions yesterday while recording the demo or before recording the demo, and Alex from their team was really helpful. So yeah, I have now the banner activated. I have the app theme embed activated or enabled through my online store. And yeah, now let's go to Google Tag Manager and see how everything will look like. So let's start by hitting the preview mode. Once I visit the website, the banner populate from this section. You can also change that to populate from the right-hand side, left-hand side, or even from the bottom of the screen. But for me, let me actually reject the banner. So once I click on reject all, I can see all the cookies over here. I can reject anything that I like and then save preferences. Now let's go back to the preview mode and see what happened. So I have here consent default data layer push, And by default, the status are granted by default, and this is inherited from the consent geolocation option, as based on my location, consent should be granted. If I'm based in another state, the consent default option should be reflected based on the consent regulation in that state or country. Now let's see what happened after I have clicked on the deny option from the banner. As you remember, I haven't clicked on deny for all of the categories. So as you can see, the on-page default was granted by default, and the update is denied for some of the categories, which I have denied, like analytics storage, functionality storage, personalization storage. You can use the consent mode option inside Google Tag Manager for your tags to make sure they are compliant and make sure they fire once the user gives consent. So to give you an overview of this, if you head to your Google Tag Manager, head to tags, open any tags. So let's use the Facebook tags, for example. So I'll open the Facebook view product tag and then scroll to the bottom. You would see consent setting over here. I have adjusted the tag to listen to the consent signals if the ad storage and analytics storage are provided or granted by the user. In this scenario, this tag will fire. If the consent is not granted by the user for these two categories, this tag will not fire even if the trigger is in place. So this is how you can use the Google Consent Mode feature inside of the Pandectes app. Once this is enabled, it will start sending the Google Consent categories, and it will be updated based on the user consent options, and then you can use them inside your tags. To give you a quick example on how this would look like, let's check one of the tags, which is the Facebook site-wide tag. If we click on this tag, we would see that we have applied the consent checks to run through that tag. This means that these tags will listen to the consent checks, and if they are in place while the trigger fires, the tag will fire. If not, the tag will not fire. So let's go back to the preview window and navigate to a new page. Let's head back to the preview mode. This is the newest page that we have. And if we check the container loaded push, we would see some tags being fired, but the Facebook site-wide pixel tag have not fired. And as you can see, it have this stats right now. So it's saying tags blocked by consent settings. This means that the trigger executed for that event, but the consent was not granted, as we can see here. If you also click on the consent menu over here, you can see that the current state column shows that the analytics storage is set to denied, and these categories are set to denied as well, meaning that this tag or any other tag that is listening to consent at this session will not fire even if the trigger executed, as the user have not provided their consent to be tracked. When you go back to the app after having the banner running for a while, you can also get an overview of the user behavior towards to the consent banner, like how many users declined that banner and how many accepted them, and the overall, and also the user locations. If you have users browsing your website from several locations from the world, you would be able to see them live from this view. If you also want to set consent categories, specific consent categories for users to be in place before the user accepts or rejects the banner, if you don't want to rely on the geolocation feature in Pandectes, they also have a GTM tag template that you can use, but I'm not currently putting it in use. It's currently paused. So you can implement or import this through the templates section and assign a default consent option for the user. So if I enable this template right now and have these consent categories set to denied, the default consent category for any users, whatever the location that they are based on, would be denied by default unless the user opts in from the consent banner. And yeah, that's it. If you go back to the Pandectes app, you'll also get an overview of how many users accepted or rejected the banner, and also what are these users' locations. They also provide some scan reports to give you a scan of your website compliance, and it is pretty helpful. I have worked with the Pandectes app over than a year, and I haven't seen any issues when using it for Shopify websites, and I highly recommend using it. And by the way, I do not give any like legal advices on how to set up your consent banner, what the default consent category should be. This is mainly an educational video on how to configure consent banners on Shopify, but the default consent categories and the consent setup details should be purely coming from your legal team, or you can also do your own research based on the regions that your website target the users to make sure that your website consent setup is 100% tracking compliant. That's it. If you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you can subscribe, like, and share that video. And yeah, the Pandectes app link in the video description. Let me know if you have any questions regarding it, and see you in the next video.